to wish you a very happy new year. And of course, 2024, very grateful that you've actually been able to make it. I personally am quite grateful that I've been able to make it. But of course, taking a look into other related perspectives, it's definitely a year of new strategies, most especially when it comes to enhancing business profitability, talking about adaptability according to the changes. The previous festive season wasn't really the best. There were some kind of a little bit of economic hardships. So definitely that could give you a clear picture of what really happened. And of course, despite the fact that the nation was able to cap down inflation up to 2.6, that is annually, well, that was quite a great achievement. But of course, we see that global politics, economic related activities have actually influenced much of what 2023 was like economically. And 2024, we definitely have to look onto those and anticipate what might exactly come 2024, and we make the right decisions accordingly. Well, the point of discussion today, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and definitely quite a big talk. Of course, everywhere, most especially when it comes to policymakers, that is across the continent. And a number of nations have already ratified for this, but the big issue is what will the political factors display when it comes to balancing up both the political and the economic side, because Africa as a continent is definitely known for quite massive divisions. That is amongst the different people. I mean, talking about from the leadership perspective and seeing the trade restrictions that are actually carried out across, actually a good example in here is when you take a look at in East Africa, Ugandan goods denied in some countries. So definitely that's part of the key pillars when it comes to the African Continental Free Trade Area, lifting of the barriers. And these are aspects that need to be discussed from the continental level, not just the regional level. And of course, taking a look at what was really transpiring, because I believe that one of the key drivers of the African Continental Free Trade Area was the availability of the infrastructure, most especially when it comes to ICT. But we saw something over the end of last week about e-commerce, which seeing actually one of the famous companies, that is Jumia, its operations across Africa being a little bit halted, and of course being a reason that there is limited adaptability of such related services in Africa as compared to rapid markets like Europe, where this is actually a formidable aspect. So, and we know that African Continental Free Trade Area e-commerce was one of those outlooks that we were seeing as an economic catalyst, as a transaction catalyst when it comes to somebody's commodities, merchandise being known across Africa. But of course, are we really embracing it, or are we just not exposed as African countries? Or can I say that the European-related economic strategies, the strategies that you employ in European markets, if you simply do a copy and paste in Africa, it might not be the case. And now that brings me back to the key aspect of any business to really experience profitability, and that is adaptability according to, because in Africa we're influenced, most of the decisions we make in various aspects are influenced by political, social, and culture related aspects. Yes, the culture plays a big role when it comes to decision making, and to some degree, of course, despite the fact that we talk about the moral standard, but moral standard vis-a-vis livelihoods of the citizens is also quite a very key aspect. And still away from that, we see that different African countries adapting different economic ideologies, some going capitalism, capitalist, others going socialist. A good example like we see is Tanzania and Kenya in East Africa. Tanzania opting for the socialist perspective, Kenya going capitalist. And personally, I really feel like if we are to have this come to a real balance, we need to have a close ideology, at least. And the aspect of the the Western colonialism has actually also played an impact in sort of halting the African Continental Free Trade Area, because the different nations side with their colonial masters. So these are some of the aspects that need to be discussed, and there is quite, I believe, a lot of education that has to be done regarding this. And of course, that's why To Don't Smart Means Business, we are definitely looking up to that, as later into the show we shall be having experts in relation to that as we break down these discussions, getting to see, well, what is the way forward and how should we adapt as African nations, and so many more. Now, of course, the recent development regarding this is from the African Development Bank. It was of the 19th of December, just 2023. It was a conference which was convened in Addis Ababa, that is Ethiopia, from 21st to 24th of November 2023, under the theme Promoting Sustainable Land Governance in Africa, for accelerating implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. So land acceleration, sustainable land acceleration implementation. Of course, when we talk about business productivity, talking about business investment, we need land. And the land distribution system in Africa is definitely a little bit it's not uniform, actually. Some countries, we see that the governments entirely have control over the land, over land ownership, unlike other nations. And that is quite a key hindrance. Now, according to a report here, Dr. Monique, that is Zanza Banganwan, that is the deputy chairperson of the African Continental, of the African Union Commission, say that the African Union stands ready, that is to support member states in advancing land-related objectives outlined by the African Union Agenda, CAM 2063. Now, the African Continental Free Trade Area and the African Union Land Policy framework and guidelines are to foster an environment where land is actually a driver of prosperity and unity. So some of these have the root issues have to be really put down. And like I told you, when it comes to land, it still points us back to the cultural perspectives about land inheritance. I mean, somebody says, I inherited this land from my grandmother who died many years ago. They trace it back, and you find that they're probably not willing. I mean, they're owning this land as just a custom, just to feel good, just to feel proud of their culture. But there is no development that is taking place on this land. So that is why such policy frameworks have to be put in place. Now, of course, she urged the delegates to translate the outcomes of the conference into concrete national, regional, and continental actions. Of course, in her own words, she said that we African nations must not only commit, that is, to the principles of discussions articulated here, but also allocate resources, build partnerships, and implement policies that promote sustainable land governance and support objectives of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Now, of course, she also emphasized the need to amplify, of course, the women and the voices of women, youth, indigenous communities, traditional institutions, and smallholder farmers in shaping the land governance strategies. That is recognizing their invaluable knowledge and expertise in managing and preserving Africa's land resources. Now, of course, the land policies and governance mechanisms in Africa need to be aligned with the African Continental Free Trade Area goals to create enabling environment for investment. I mean, we're talking about trade and economic development in the continent, as she said. And definitely now this calls for individual member states to uphold reforms when it comes to land distribution in Africa. We've seen this president. It was discussed in Uganda. Still, we don't know how far those developments have gone. But of course, it's all for the bigger vision of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Land reforms, that is quite key. Now, of course, we see that development partners were asked to foster a better coordination in agenda to setting that is the dissemination and the alignment of the development partners with the African Union and the governing strategy, because policymakers urged the African Union to definitely prioritize land, natural resources policy development and legal reforms that are people-centered and gender-conscious. Of course, women play quite a huge role, being involved in trade in continental commerce as a key agenda, because we believe they actually have the urge, the muscle to really contribute big to the continent's gross domestic product. And now, of course, we see that they also called for adequate financing of land and natural resources, the governance processes and institutions. Now, professional and non-state actors included civil society and non-government organizations that is active in the land sector, which urged the monitoring and reporting on the implementation of the African Union strategy. Now, they also want the national and regional spaces to be created for engagement and dialogue between non-state actors and African Continental Free Trade Area implementation mechanisms, while tapping into the experiences of knowledge, talking about lessons learned on land governance and the African Continental Free Trade Area. From that perspective. Now, finally, this is a very important perspective, the aspect of the traditional leaders, which made a call to the African Union to ensure inclusivity and to empower them to oversee customary land processes and procedure in their respective countries. Now, they also encouraged collaboration and synergy, that is, between government and traditional leaders in matters related to land governance to foster accelerated implementation. Now we see traditional leaders coming into with a call to the African Union. Definitely, as much as they are looking at a fair land reforms in the different countries, it should be a little bit fair when it comes to distribution, because in this way, some people might use it as a chance to grab other people's land and hinder development. But of course, this distribution should be economic oriented. You know, a certain degree, probably the number of acres you own on land, a number of them should actually be for development. Probably you stay with a few acres for the customary related perspectives, to feel good that you own land and so many more. But development should actually be at the core of every perspective, because we need to understand, despite the fact that Africa, however much we're trying to diversify our economies into various into various sectors like technology, minerals, and so many more, agriculture still stands to be a natural advantage, a competitive advantage that we have. And given the current economic the current global economic trends following climate change, which of course brings a great discussion regarding food security globally. Africa stands a chance to cover that gap of food security, and that means money. And money we talk about being obtained from agriculture, which has a lot to do with the favorable land policies in a given country. So more of those discussions are going to be coming up shortly after this. But of course, at this point in time, let's take a look at what's really making headlines across the praise. And the Daily Monitor. I'm going to kickstart off here with the Daily Monitor. Of course, taking a look at on the top page here, private farms free to import fuel. That is, says government, and of course, plan to give the Uganda National Oil Company, that is a monopoly of fuel importation starting this month, slows down And now, of course, giving private companies room to import, that is the commodity, as dispute with Kenyan traders blocking use of pipeline threatens the country's oil supply. Okay, that's what has been happening. And I had a discussion with the public relation affairs of eunuch in regards to this. But of course, we shall be taking a look at what is really happening just that side. But there are greater details still when you grab yourself a copy of the Daily Monitor. And now, of course, still as we proceed here, seeing quite a number of people that welcome the new year in different styles. Some actually were in the prayer places, some were in the parting places. But of course, either way, they were all able to reach the new year efficiently. And of course, still, it's what I'm seeing as I open up here. And now, of course, clerics call for peace and end to corruption in the new year. Now, of course, churches also lashed out at politicians who never fulfill their pledges and promises, something that derails development. Yes, when they don't fulfill the promises, development is definitely hindered on that because the public definitely counts on them for various reasons. All right. Now, of course, Uganda, seeing here, Uganda has fertile ground for disease outbreaks, says Health Ministry. And of course, records from the Health Ministry indicate that 2023 was not only different from the previous years, that is in terms of the frequency of the outbreaks, so should be watch out there. And now this brings us to, if you're careless about your health, it's definitely going to come back financially to you, most especially if you don't have insurance. But even when you have insurance, it may not be able to cover the degree of the bill that you have, and insurance can't cover that. So you need to take care. All right. Of course, teenage pregnancies here, top districts named. That you can find that out. And of course, locals blame security lapses for the ADF attacks. Yes, locals blaming security lapses. And now seeing Busia teachers storm council sitting over unpaid salaries. Now, of course, the delay is said to have been caused by the district authorities that way. Okay, still here, in the Prosper section, music concerts. There is a big question here. Who really takes the money? Of course, music concerts are big businesses as they come with tickets that attract. That is a value-added tax, income tax, and withholding tax, in addition to other costs of costs to stage a show. But promoters take the biggest share of the money, according to the report. So grab yourself a copy of the Daily Monitor, and you will know what is really happening from the music side there. Who really takes the money? Now, of course, away from the Daily Monitor, I will also, of course, take a look at the New Vision as we proceed along here. Of course, Shekedi wins. What does it mean for Uganda for Shekedi to win the vote that way? So you'll find that. Now, Museveni meets South Korean evangelist. What could be the reason? And of course, seeing how telecoms plan to push 5G. Yes, I think that's going to be quite a huge discussion for this year, 2023. Because the faster the internet, the faster the transactions that we make. And of course, seeing women who rocked the news scene come 2023. And Al-Shabaab here aims to stay longer, ATMIS to stay longer in Somalia. And 700 arrested in Kampala during festivities. And that is, of course, crime-related aspects here. Okay. As we still get into the deeper perspectives, of course, somebody here says that don't worry about that is Museveni's successor. This is Bishop Musigwa making that point that way. And of course, taking a look at the Defense Ministry to boost UPDF junior officers' welfare. That is great news. And of course, we proceed quite lots of pictures of people celebrating the new year. And of course, taking a look at the Democratic Republic of Congo elections, his re-election, that is Tshisekedi, provides Uganda an opportunity to deal here. Now, of course, here somebody says that Tshisekedi's re-election is not actually good news for the Allied Democratic Forces and other insurgent groups in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. So who's that? And now here they tell you who is Felix Tshisekedi. Yes, find out. Grab yourself a copy. You'll find out who really he is. Okay, now of course, religious leaders pray for a fruitful 2024. Find that out as you grab yourself a copy for the new vision. And of course, religious leaders call for speedy roadworks. Yeah, roadworks, definitely, because this is quite away from just the conference that we're preparing ourselves for this particular month. Actually, we need to know that this is part of what we call sound economic policies when it comes to bolstering economic activities in the nation. Stable infrastructure, plays quite a huge role to determine that. All right, now still we proceed, and somebody here says that January conferences will market our tourism. Okay, let's wait and see. And of course, somebody here tells you in the comment section that focus on your plan to drive your goal. It's good to focus on your plan. Anyway, in case you have one, you need to have one. And now seeing here digital banking challenges for 2024, you'll find them out. And 2024 off to start. Somebody here says, I'm in the comment section now. 2024 off to a good start for businesses. Now getting into the oil and gas infrastructure section. Now, of course, happening around the world. We see that, of course, Ivory Coast pledges petrol per month to Guinea, and Norway fund divests Gulf state assets. Yes, Norway fund divests Gulf state assets. So you find out full details when you grab yourself a copy. That is of the new vision. And now, of course, taking a look at electricity in 2024, the new high growth areas. What are those new high growth areas as we can proceed? And here we see why the need to increase electricity supply come 2024. And of course, taking a look here at oil and gas exploration, which is entering the final stage, talking about Ngasa. Now, Uganda is currently in advanced stages of developing its oil and gas resources, and expectations are that the country will see its first oil drop next year. Yes, just next year. That's when we're going to see our first oil drop. Now, seeing here smartphone growth to unlock new mobile money possibilities in the new year. This is the managing director, MTN Uganda, saying that. He says that smartphone growth is to unlock new mobile money possibilities in the new year. Okay. Now, of course, telecoms adapt strategies to push the fifth generation, or what we know as the 5G penetration. Let's wait and see. And being here in the court section, manager sues employer over salary areas. Now, the company urges that it followed all recommendations to let rotters look for other work and receive benefits that would be due at the conclusion of his unemployment. All right. Now, finally, here we see fostering sustainable industrial growth in Africa. This is Adam El Hiraka. Now, of course, he says that achieving the sustainable growth and building resilience requires structural transformation, while talking about successful industrial policies require both sectoral focus and getting the basics right. Yeah, reforms in infrastructure. I think he's really right. Breaking them down to sector. Yeah, finally, the new year excites Ugandans. For Victoria is quite a lot. Different places where people happen to be to celebrate that being put out there. And of course, I'll also talk about a record number of drones attacks foiled on New Year's Eve, says Ukraine. As much as some people were celebrating the New Year in Ukraine, drones were just flying all over the place, destroying people's livelihoods, destroying their property, and so many more. And yeah, all right. Now that brings us to the end of our press brief. And definitely at exactly 26 minutes past 7, let's take a break, and we'll return with Caribbean, East Africa, and international updates. Stick around.
Smart 24, driving business.